Hello everybody and welcome to something that's very, very exciting. It's going to be the first of many A+ 1102 quizzes. Today I'm going to give you a practice examination question for every single one of the exam objectives for the A+ 1102 exam. I'm going to give you a detailed explanation of why those answers for those quiz questions are correct, and I'm going to tell you pretty much what you're going to need to know in order to be able to confidently answer questions on these particular exam objectives. So if that sounds good, stick around. We'll go ahead and get started right away. Let's do it with question number 1, coming from exam objective 1. The question reads, there we go. The question reads, you're concerned about the settings on your computer and want to control how apps access your location data. Which Windows setting would be the most appropriate to manage these permissions? A, privacy, B, system, C, devices, or D, network and internet. Pause the video if you need some time to answer that question. Go ahead and press play when you're ready to find out the answer, because that's coming in 3, 2, 1. The answer to that question is A, privacy. So the privacy setting in Windows provides the most direct control over how apps access your location data. And you can see here, if you go into your settings, you've got privacy and security, and there's a subsection called location, which allows you to configure the permissions surrounding location services and what apps can access your location. So the other options for that were B, system, which is where you kind of configure general system information and configuration. C, devices, which is where you configure the devices attached to your particular device that you're using. So that could be things like printers, external drives, things to that effect. And then we also had network and internet, which is pretty self-explanatory, right? That's where you configure the network and internet settings. That one doesn't take too much thinking to get your head around. Now, that question, like I said, came from exam objective 1, but specifically, it came from exam objective 1.5. So for this exam objective, you are going to need to know the following. You're going to need to know how to use the appropriate Windows settings. And it says, given a scenario, use the appropriate Windows settings. So that pretty much tells you exactly what you're going to need to be able to do for this exam. And that tells you that you're going to be given some kind of scenario, and you're going to need to be able to choose which of these different options are the most relevant one to use based on what needs to be accomplished in that scenario. So that's pretty much the question that we just had there. So that was a pretty good example of what you're likely to get on your exam. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move into the next question, which is from exam objective 2. Let's take a look, focusing on security. Rajesh is currently recovering from the emotional tragedy of having his cat pictures released online by a hacker. He wants to ensure he never has this happen again, so is researching which wireless security protocol is the strongest. Once he has finished his research, which protocol should he use? A, WPA2, B, WPA1, C, WPA3, or D, Wi-Fi protected access? Pause the video if you need more time. We're going to get straight into the answer in about now. The answer is C, WPA3. So look, there's an explanation you can read here, but essentially for your exam, pause the video if you want to read this a little bit more, give some information on why that was correct and the options that were incorrect. But essentially, for your exam, you're going to need to cover You're going to need to cover these two wireless protocols. So you've got WPA2 and WPA3. This is coming straight out of exam objective 2.2, which says, compare and contrast wireless security protocols and authentication methods. So think about what those words mean. Compare and contrast. So if you're comparing something, you're going to need to understand the features of it, and you're going to need to be able to say, this is one of those things, this is the other one of those things, here's the features of each, and here's how they're different from one another. So in this particular situation with Rajesh and his cat pictures, we've essentially been asked to say, all right, here are some different Wi-Fi standards. We need to be able to compare them and say which one is the most secure. We're comparing their level of security in this particular instance. So that's what you're going to need to know. You're also going to need to understand the encryption here, different authentication methods as well. You're going to need to have an understanding of all of these. You're going to need to understand the features of each. What are they? So long as you can roughly verbally explain a lot of these concepts to someone in front of you and do so in a way where you can actually get them to understand it, you should be okay. But just for your sake, I've pulled this out of my learning guide here, and this is pretty much at a high level what you're going to need to know about these concepts. So you've got WPA2, which is not as secure. Roughly, it's very unlikely you'll need to know the specifics. You'll need to understand conceptually that it is just not as secure. And then you've got WPA3, which is in fact the newer standard and is more secure. And then you also have the two different types of encryption standards, which have their own pros and cons that you can read about there. But that's what you're going to need to know for that particular dot point of that exam objective. For this dot point of 2.2, you'll need to know the different Wi-Fi protocols, and you'll need to know the different encryption methods as well. What's good, what's bad, what's new, what's old, what you should use for the most security, what you should use if you're trying to prioritize budget instead. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and move on to our third question, which is coming from exam objective 3. Let's do it. The question reads, you are faced with a potentially malware-infected computer. In which order should all of the following steps be taken to address the malware effectively and minimize potential damage? You have A, B, C, and D there. I'm not going to read all of that out, but pause the video and have a read and see what you think. Pause the video now and hit play when you're ready to find the answer, because that's coming right about now. The answer is B. So essentially, guys, for this particular question, it's drawn from exam objective 3.3, and that reads, given a scenario, use best practice procedures for malware removal. And you're essentially going to need to just remember the order of malware removal that CompTIA recommends you follow from their particular exam objectives, and you're going to need to understand roughly what you're going to be doing in each of these particular steps. So what does it actually look like to investigate and verify malware symptoms? What kind of tasks would you complete? What does it look like to quarantine an infected system? What steps would you actually take there in order to do that? So in what order do you complete these steps, and what do each of those steps look like? So long as you can talk about that, so long as you understand that, you're on the right track and you're ready to conquer that one. So that being said, we're on to our fourth and final question for the A+ 1102 exam, because there's only 4 exam objectives in this one. Some of them are packed pretty tight, but there's only 4 of them, so it makes it a little bit easier for us today. So let's go ahead and do our last question. The last question is, Taryn, a project manager at your company, is leading the implementation of a new customer relationship management system. She understands the importance of effective change management and wants to ensure a smooth transition for the team. In the context of documented business processes, which of the following actions by Taryn would be most beneficial for successful change management? A. Develop entirely new documentation for the CRM system without referencing existing customer interaction processes. B. Review and update existing documentation on customer interaction workflows and access controls to reflect the new CRM system. C. Focus exclusively on training employees on how to use the CRM. Or D. Delegate documenting the new CRM system to the IT department without involving end users in order to maximize efficiency. That's a lot of words, guys. Go ahead and pause that video and come back and hit the play button when you're ready to find the answer, because we're bringing that answer up right about now. The answer is B. Review and update existing documentation on customer interaction workflows and access controls to reflect the new CRM system. So when we think about this question, guys, what's it asking us to do here? It's saying, right, okay, Taryn is a project manager. She's leading the implementation of a new customer relationship management. So she's bringing in a new system. She understands the importance of effective change management. So we're talking about change management, and wants to ensure a smooth transition for the team. Okay, so we're bringing in a new system. We want it to be a smooth transition. We don't want it to be sudden. We want it to be smooth. We want it to flow naturally. In the context of documented business processes, which of the following actions would be most beneficial? Do we want to develop entirely new documentation? So get rid of all of the old documentation and start from scratch without referencing any existing processes. So without referencing anything any of our employees already know, probably not a good idea, right? Because if we're not referencing anything that people have already been doing in the company, they're going to have to start from scratch. That's not going to be a smooth transition, is it? B, review and update the current documentation on customer interaction workflows and access controls to reflect the new CRM system. Okay, so we're having a look, what do we already have? And we're updating it and integrating it into the new system. That sounds pretty good, right? People already know about what we have in the system currently. They're going to be familiar with it. We're just taking that, rearranging it, updating a little bit, and putting it in the new system. That sounds like a pretty good option and like it would have a smooth transition. C, focus exclusively on training employees on how to use the CRM. Okay, well, if you focus exclusively on training employees, you're not really focusing on anything else, are you? You can't focus only on that. So the term exclusively tells us that it's probably not going to be the best option there, right? Because you're going to need to focus on more than just training employees when it comes to implementing an entirely new system. And then you've got D, delegate documenting the new CRM system to the IT department without involving end users in order to maximize efficiency. So that would basically mean you have no end user testing. You're not even asking people what they think. You're not checking in to see if there's anything you need to change. You're just saying, IT department, you handle it. We won't even ask people what they think or do any testing on that. Probably not the best idea, right? So that's why B seems like the most reasonable answer there. And that's why we went with that. So there's a further explanation here written out that you can pause and read if you want to, but that's pretty much what I just talked you through there, right? So that brings us to where that's from, which is from exam objective 4, more specifically 4.2, explain basic change management best practices. And you can see here we've highlighted, it's from this particular dot point. So documented business processes. So you'll need to know about just the idea of the idea of documenting business processes in a way that is appropriate, I suppose. And within that category, you'll need to know what a rollback plan is, what sandbox testing is, and understand the concept of delegating tasks to a responsible staff member as well. And you'll also need to know about these over here, but that's for another day, I think. So look, if you have found this video useful, if you think that you've enjoyed this content and it's helped you to prepare for the exam, you can continue to follow me and follow my quiz videos, which will certainly help you prepare for the exam for free. But if you feel like you need a little bit extra help, you can head over to journeytocyber.com, where I have 2 products for you that will pretty much eliminate your need to go out into the wilderness and search for books that are this thick and a Udemy learning guide that kind of covers the exam objectives, but then it like strays off and starts going on a rant about the history of DHCP servers. If you want to cut all that nonsense out, you want to just focus on studying what you need to study, you can head over to journeytocyber.com. I have a learning guide for you. That's where I've pulled these practice questions from, the notes from, the explanations from, and within that, it also gives you access to an online quiz database as well with questions that will basically provide you with a simulated exam experience. And I also have 7 performance-based questions for you there too, which are really complex and pull in multiple different exam objectives together and give you a simulated PBQ experience. So if you want to grab those, you can head over to journeytocyber.com. They're there for you, ready to go. All right, guys, that being said, I'll see you in the next video.